The classic route up the Eiger-Nordwand, which so many of us have now followed, was really discovered in 1936 by Rainer, Angerer, Kurz and Hinterstoisser. And it was Andel Hinterstoisser who led this critical passage where you're basically sneaking in from the right-hand side of the face underneath a great red vertical cliff, and you're sort of sneaking your way into the centre of the face. And there's a critical passage where this very steep slab, it's at about 70 degrees, and it looks really smooth. And he did what was then a very modern technique. He did a sort of tension traverse, using tension from the rope to edge his way across this smooth slab for a long way, for about 80 feet or so.
When you go along the Hinterstoisser traverse, it's got a rope fixed in place now, but it still feels quite committing because you're kind of on a traverse line. And as soon as you start traversing a mountain, it makes retreat a lot more difficult, because retreating downwards is quite straightforward, but as soon as you have to start retreating sideways, then it all gets a lot more complicated.
Hinterstoisser's brilliant and bold traverse had unlocked the north face of the Eiger. The route upwards lay open to them.
They got right up onto the Flatiron, almost to the point where Sedlmayr and Maringer had reached the year before, and it was then that they started to retreat.
The reasons for their retreat are unclear, but it's likely that Angerer had been seriously injured by a falling rock. Their line of retreat put them in the path of the constant avalanches.
All the time they're being bombarded by these lethal salvos of loose rocks falling from above, and probably hailstorms coming down, and even waterfalls when it gets warmer. It can be absolutely murderous. And intermittently, during gaps in the clouds, the people in the valley were able to see these tiny, tiny little figures retreating, watching them through the telescopes.
As they arrived back at the traverse, they realised that they had made a terrible mistake. Instead of leaving a rope in place, Hinterstoisser had taken it with him. He would have to reverse the move without the rope in place. And now, the weather had broken.
To make matters worse, those smooth slabs of limestone were now covered in this glaze, this veneer of ice, and so the thing had become virtually impossible.
He tried and tried, but eventually had to give up in exhaustion. The only way off the mountain was straight down.
The problem with that is, below the Hinterstoisser traverse, you've got great overhangs, it's undercut. And so as they set off abseiling down, they were abseiling into unknown territory with huge overhangs, which were going to leave them dangling in space. And it was during that whole business with frozen ropes, 4 people setting up anchors, desperation to get this injured man down. And at some point during all that confusion, we don't know exactly what happened, but basically someone fell. Pulled the others off, an anchor failed, and there were bodies hurtling through the air, there were ropes whipping through the air, and it ended up with 3 men dead and 1 man, Toni Kurz, still alive, but hanging, literally hanging on the rope in space beneath the lip of one of those great overhangs.
The Eiger Railway runs right through the mountain, and there are viewing windows high in the face for the railway guards and the public to look out of. That night, a guard heard a shout through the Stollenlock window. Realising that there were climbers in trouble, he alerted the mountain guides, and a rescue party set out through the window into the storm.
They come up in a special train, they climb out onto the face, and they shout up to Kurz, "We can't do anything tonight, just try and get through the night, we'll be back in the morning."
The hotels of Kleine Scheidegg were packed with visitors eager to watch the drama high on the mountain. Early the next morning, the guides climbed out through the Stollenlock window and managed to get to 40 metres below Kurz, but they couldn't reach him because of the overhang above them. Kurz managed to haul up the 2 lengths of rope he would need to descend the last 40 metres. Somehow he managed to tie the ropes together, but as he abseiled down, the knot joining the ropes jammed in his carabiner. Mountain guide Arnold Gladhart was one of the rescue party.
I said, look, I give you a knife up, and you have to cut the rope above you, because I'm so good here. We are all good. We are 100%. And you don't fall more than 5 meters to us, and we will hold you. Cut the rope, and then you will be safe.
They were just down there, the people who could save his life. And he just couldn't get, his fingers were completely frostbitten, they were just dead. He just couldn't get it through, and they were saying, go on, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. And he was desperately fumbling and fumbling. And then this had been going on for over 24 hours now, and eventually he just said, it's finished, and died.
Eiger historian Rainer Rettner believes that Kurz could have been saved.
There was one thing that happened that was really bad luck. You know, one of the guides had a long rope just put between the back and the rucksack, but not into his rucksack. And when he made a sudden movement, the rope dropped and fell to the base of the North Fall. And that was a thing, you know, that was really tragic, because maybe this would have saved Toni Kurz's life.
Kurtz's body was later cut down. This recently discovered footage shows mountain guides retrieving his body. The press and the public were enthralled by the exquisite horror of Toni Kurtz's death.
Toni Kurz, that was perfect. I mean, it's a little bit ironic, but that was life. That was 2 days, 3 days, and people were there, and radio was there, and newspaper was there.
The ghouls were all there, yeah. They flocked to the telescopes. It was really good for business, for tourism. I mean, it's like the reverse of the Roman circus. Instead of looking down into the amphitheatre, they're looking up at it.
I always said, if there would have been television, I think they would have filmed live how Toni Kurz is dying, because that was so dramatic. I mean, there were 4 climbers tracked in the North Face, and then 2 rescue teams fighting against other. The weather was bad, and stuff like, you couldn't invent it better.
The Eiger was front-page news all over Europe once again. The Swiss authorities banned climbing on the north face of the Eiger, and Colonel Strutt of the British Alpine Club was outraged.
He wrote words to the effect that this was simply a pastime for the mentally deranged, and that whoever finally succeeded in climbing the north face of the Eiger could satisfy themselves by knowing that they'd pulled off the most imbecilic variant in the history of mountaineering.
Imbecilic or not, for mountaineers, the Eiger's north face had become an even bigger prize.
I think it's the only mountain face in the world where you can actually get a train and then just like walk onto the north face, isn't it? Sort of halfway out.
Kenton and Neil have special permission to visit one of the Eiger's most extraordinary features, the Stollenloch. When the Eiger Railway was built, the workmen used this window high on the face to throw rubble out. It's the same window that the mountain guides used to try and rescue Toni Kurz. The Stollenloch would allow Kenton and Neil to check conditions on the face.
Cool. Wicked, eh?
Awesome. This is amazing.
Right, can we start digging? Can we?
You can almost see light out of it.
You can almost see light. So this is a Stollenloch. This is well exciting. I've not popped out of this window before. I've actually climbed past this within about 50, 60 metres. So it's going to be really, really exciting. I mean, this is just great. Because you read all the books about it and you hear all the epics about people getting back in, or some people unfortunately not getting back in storms and things like that, and then literally having to walk down the railway track to safety. I can't believe I'm so excited about going out of the door. It's like escape to victory.
Yeah. It's like the Great Escape, isn't it? You kind of dig in afterwards. Yeah, come on up, Kenton.
Oh, awesome. Check this out. Bugger me, this is awesome.
Look at the walls above.
Wow.
Hey, look at the mushroom.
Mushroom, yeah.
That is amazing. That's where the base jumpers leap from.
One slip, certain death.
This is just amazing. Absolutely amazing. We just popped out. And it's just like we're on the north face. A spindrift coming down, and it's pretty cold. It's quite foreboding, actually.
I mean, this is a scene of so many epics, so many almost horror-like stories about people battling for their lives to get up here and then in. And probably none quite as bad as the 36 epic of Toni Kurz and his really good climbing companions and friends. As a boy growing up reading things like The White Spider, the book that tells you about the history of the Eiger, to be here and to be part of it and actually have time to think about it. That's what's so emotional today. We normally come up here as fast as we can, climbing really fast to try and get up as high on the face before we bivouac. But today I've got time to look around and just soak it all in. It's quite an emotional place to be, actually. It really is. And just to climb through the windows, who's pushed the door open and collapsed inside going, thank God we're alive, we've escaped, or conversely, who shut the door knowing that someone is left out here? It's a powerful place to be.
The Kurz tragedy had made the Eiger irresistible to climbers. The Swiss ban lasted just 4 months, and in 1937 2 young Italians died on the face. In 1938, the last summer of peace before World War II, 4 exceptional climbers arrived in Kleine Scheidegg. Germans Andreas Heckmeyer and Ludwig Vogt, and Austrians Fritz Kasperek and Heinrich Harrer. Their route has become one of the great classics of alpine climbing.
It's a big, complicated route. It's not going straight up and down. It works its way up a series of lines of weakness. And if you're in thick cloud, quite easy, particularly in the upper part, to actually lose your way. And it's technically not super hard, but it's because of the complexity, the size and the length. It's a hugely complex mountaineering challenge and problem. And I think it still is, it is one of the really great routes of the Alps.
It's a classic route and it's a serious route, and I mean, in '38 it was like just an outstanding performance they did. You have to move fast, there are a couple sections there is not good protection, so it's still a serious climb.
Wörg had a camera with him, and he made all the time pictures. And people could see how, not only read it, but also see how they did it. And these pictures, I find these pictures, if you look at it, it looks, wow, gee, that was bad conditions.
Harrer and Kasperek set off first, at 2 a.m. on the morning of July the 21st. They climbed slowly. Harrer had left his crampons behind, and they were soon passed by Vogt and Kasperek.
It was much worse than we ever thought and had anticipated.